There was a ton of concern around whether or not Florida State would be able to make it into the Big Ten due to certain accreditations, certain academic standards. They got good news today, and we're going to talk about that. We have obviously covered conference realignment from just about every angle possible, and more good news for the Noles today, as Brett McMurphy tweeted that AAU membership is not a requirement to join the Big Ten. He says sources told the Action Network this maybe AAU status is a preference, but solid academics are measured in a variety of ways, the source told McMurphy. Obviously, the Big Ten 16 members, including USC and UCLA, are all AAU except Nebraska. NIU was an AAU member in 2010 but lost its status in 2011. Notre Dame and Miami recently gained AAU status. Other potential big expansion candidates in AAU are Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, UNC, and Virginia. He said the most notable AAU, non-AAU Big Ten candidates are Florida State and Clemson. Obviously, this was thought of as a potential hindrance if it was a requirement. A lot of people thought that Florida State could not get to the Big Ten without being an AAU member. But with McMurphy putting this out today, the path seems a little bit more open. It's not SEC or Boast, which we'll talk about in just a moment. The path a little bit more open for them to get to the Big Ten. Obviously, we want to get out of the ACC. Richie, Florida State's made some pretty big strides in academics. Let's talk about both the AAU membership not being a requirement and the strides they've made with academics.
Absolutely. You know, the American Association of American Universities, you know, it's not really a credential or anything. It's just like a private club, like a secret society or something. But it does hold a lot of weight because of the members they have. But as you mentioned, there's other academic rankings you can look at. Currently, Florida State is ranked the 19th best public school in the nation, according to U.S. World News and World Report or World Rankings. Ranks higher than a couple Big Ten schools, and you know that's a big climb. You know, to no pun there intended, but they were ranked 40th overall back in 2010 of public schools when President Eric Barron took over, and he made a commitment to academics. A lot of people feel like he didn't value athletics enough, but that really started this climb that we're talking about, where now Florida State is a top 20 public school in the country, again, according to the U.S. World News and Report rankings, and that's a big deal. And Florida State, you know, they're on the journey to join the AAU. You just mentioned Miami, right? If you include private schools, Florida State ranks 55th overall in the country in those same rankings, tied with Miami at 55th overall, who just received AAU status. And keep in mind, private universities typically rank higher just because they prefer the private universities, and a lot of it goes to research. AAU membership is by invitation only, which requires an affirmative vote of 3/4 of current members. Invitations are considered periodically, based in part on assessment of the breadth and quality of the university programs of research and graduate education, as well as undergraduate education. So here's where Florida State's biggest opportunity is. It becomes with the Academic Medical Center, which they are working so hard to get done, because a lot of it comes to research and research dollars. The National Institute of Health funds a lot of these AAU universities, and that's what Florida State's going for, because if they start getting NIH dollars, it's almost inevitable that they will end up as an AAU university. A quick update from March 8th of 2023. Florida State University and Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare, aka TMH, announced Wednesday a designation of land which the university will build an academic health center. This is a big deal because this expedites it. It's a possibility they could get that invitation before this opens, because it's clear that that's the goal. All these schools have partnerships with local healthcare organizations. TMH is very well known in the state, especially the Panhandle. This is a big deal for Florida State on the academic side, which could help clear those hurdles to getting to the AAU. But I think, like you said, TJ, the big takeaway, that may not be a hurdle to get into the Big Ten, at least in the immediate future.
Yeah, Florida State is going to continue to work really, really hard, whether or not it is going to be for the Big Ten, for athletics or not. And it's good to see that that's not a prerequisite. I also think that, as they said, other things are considered, but I do think that it's a good thing that Florida State is working towards this. And it looks like they will be an AAU member soon enough. We'll talk about a timeline for that I've kind of been hinted on a little bit. But it is good that Florida State's going to continue to push there. I think the Big Ten would certainly rather a more prestigious academic university that is working toward that, whether they say it's a prerequisite or a requirement or not. I do believe that they would like you to be working toward it. They would like you to be kind of in that same vein. They do have an academic standard there, and so I think that's really big. We mentioned this, Miami, Notre Dame getting in that. I've long time thought that Miami was a pretty good fit for the Big Ten. I do believe Notre Dame will end up there as well. And so we'll see. A lot of people thought that it was kind of SEC or bust. This probably opens that possibility up to where it's not just SEC or stay in the ACC or fight it out in the Big 12. You do have an option of the Big 10. The people that I've talked with, my sources, the folks that are close to the program, from an FSU perspective, they certainly see benefits to either the Big 10 or the SEC. And I think they're pretty willing to listen to offers. But ultimately, I do think that they're going to do what is in FSU's best interest. It's in FSU's best interest to not fall in love with one or the other, but to let financial long-term drive the conversation. Let what's going to be best for not only athletics but academics be what's best for the university. And that's the way I think that this will go. I don't think that they're going to just fall in love or fall over the fastest or the first offer to come through. I think that they certainly will have a pick of the litter. Florida State, Clemson, Notre Dame, those are the big schools that are left in this. People talk about Washington, Oregon, North Carolina, Virginia. I don't think those schools hold any kind of comparison to what Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson offer. And so I think Florida State can be picky, but I do think it's a good thing that, they will have maybe their pick of the litter, maybe, an option, if you will, right? And so it's good that it's not a prerequisite, but I do think that it's also good that Florida State's going to continue to push forward in that direction. All right, I know Richie's got a take on this tweet coming out, this conversation happening right now, some different things going on, but first I do want to give some love to our friends over at Garnet and Gold. If you're an FSU fan, if you're watching this, you can go to garnetandgold.com. Make sure that you're using code NOSLAW. That's NOSLAW at garnetandgold.com. We've done events with them. We've done tailgates that they've helped support. We appreciate their support of not only FSU's athletes through NIL, but also through the boosters. They are an A-class company, and you should make sure that you get all of your gear from them. garnetandgold.com, NOSLAW for 15% off. Okay, Richie, what are your thoughts on this coming out from McMurphy today? You think he's just tweeting this for fun, or why? What are the thoughts around this?
Nah, just following McMurphy over the years, usually his tweets hold substance. I learned that back when he broke the, Ohio State scandal on Facebook. He just found a way to do it. I think there's a lot to it, right? And it's the best thing that could happen to Florida State, because even if you're Mike Lawford and President McCollum and you want to be in the SEC, the SEC, knowing that Florida State is an option for the Big Ten, kind of forces their hand a little bit, because do you really want the Big Ten to come in and get the premier school in the state of Florida? Or do you just want to say, we'll bite the bullet, scrap this gentleman's agreement from the 90s with South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and say, listen, Florida, I'm sorry. We cannot have the Big Ten coming in, infringing on our territory. Ohio State already recruits extremely well in the state of Florida. If they get Florida State as well, that just makes it worse for you guys, Alabama, Georgia, all the other schools that go and recruit the state of Florida. I think that this is a great bargaining chip for Florida State. I think academically, you'd probably rather be aligned with the Big Ten. But from an athletic standpoint, especially geographically, the SEC is just a perfect fit, and it's a perfect cultural fit as well. So I do think this kind of puts the ball in Florida State's court a little bit. Still some hurdles to overcome with the ACC and the grant of rights, but the fact that the Big Ten has made it known, basically without mentioning Florida State's name, hey, we're willing to take Florida State, that's got to give the SEC a little bit of pause to say, yeah, do we really want the Big Ten getting a team that's won a national title in the past 10 years, who was, the preeminent brand in college football for 30 years leading up to that?
Yeah, I think that you're spot on there with the SEC. I certainly think that they probably at some point felt like that they could slow play this and kind of do whatever, let it happen when it happens. When Florida State gets out, they get out. But I think that they have to probably sweeten the pot a little bit. It's not just, again, I hate to be so cliche by saying this, but it's not just so much SEC or bust. And so it probably does let Florida State have a little bit more leverage. It probably does let Florida State have a little bit of a different kind of bargaining chip than they would have had otherwise. And so I do think it is super helpful. I do think that it's something that's going to benefit FSU. And maybe Michael Alford already even knew this. Maybe maybe that's just McMurphy kind of putting it out for the world to know. But now, because we do know it, we're going to make a video about it and we're going to talk about it and make content. But I do think that now that we know that, now that we understand that, now that the SEC knows that the world knows that, I think that that's important. And I do think it gives, whatever cliche you want to use, whether it's Florida State can now bring more to the table, Florida State has another bargaining chip, Florida State's going to get multiple offers, whatever. It's just nice to know that there are potential options. Now, there are a lot of different paths. We've talked about a lot of different ways that Florida State could potentially get out of the ACC. Timelines for that, we'll link our playlist of conference realignment videos at the end of this video. Richie, I've been told that this could be accomplished within the next year or two. I know we were talking a little bit offline about this. Is it going to be a 4 or 5 year thing? Could it be earlier? Some folks that are kind of close to the university have told me this could be a year or two away, which would be pretty impressive. I've also kind of given the timeline that I think Florida State's out of the ACC in the next 3 to 5 years. We'll see if that's the case or not. But those would be two pretty interesting timelines. Even if it was closer to that 4 or 5 number, I still think things kind of fall in line if that's when Florida State does get out of the ACC. But I do appreciate how Florida State, like I said, is going to continue to push on this one way or the other, whether it's the ACC, SEC, or Big Ten. I do think academics are important, and I think Florida State's going to continue to push for academics as well. Just hopefully happens in the next year or two, and hopefully happens in a new conference.
Yeah, and I think you finally have the perfect president that has a strong, lean towards academics with his Harvard background, President McCollum, but also understands the importance of college football in the South especially. Go look at application numbers for Florida State University around after the 2013 season. They were record highs, right? They've dipped off a bit since then. And that, unfortunately does play a role, or fortunately, however you want to look at it. And that's a big deal. We had TK Weatherall, who I thought had way too much of a hand in the athletics and didn't focus enough on academics. President Barron was kind of the opposite, more concerned with the academics, not really appreciating what athletics value could bring to the academic side. I think President McCollum is a guy that can absolutely understand that academics come first, but if I can use this football team and the other programs to help us out, he's going to do it. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to money. And I think, the timeline, it really is tricky because we don't know. There's so much we don't know. But, on current events this week, a lot of golf fans had their golf world rocked earlier this week when the PGA and LIV merged, and it was all about money and assets because the PGA was bleeding assets, and they said, we need these guys back, the Brooks Koepkas of the world. Do the Big Ten see Florida State as a Brooks Koepka of college football and say, let's get him before we don't have a chance or we lose him for good? I think it's fascinating, but I do think this alignment or realignment is going to go quicker than a lot of people think, and I'm here for it. I'm excited.
We've talked a lot about the benefits of joining other conferences, and the major benefit to me, and we'll actually do another video on the benefits of joining the Big 10 specifically, another one on joining the SEC. So make sure that you're subscribed and locked in for both of those. If you've watched this video for nearly 15 minutes, then I would hope that you subscribe. It seems like you're pretty into this content. That's why we didn't ask for you to subscribe earlier in the video. But we will certainly do a video breaking down the benefits of joining both conferences and where we kind of see the pros there. The biggest benefit, though, man, the finances that are going to come with joining the Big Ten. We've talked about the revenue difference between the SEC and the ACC over the next 13 years. It's about $600 million. It's more in the Big Ten. So I'll say that. It's even a higher number in the Big Ten. We'll break all that down and we'll talk more about what benefits would look like in a future video. So make sure that you are subscribed and locked in. Again, Richie, I appreciate you for hanging out and joining me today. If you guys have missed any of our conference realignment videos, the playlist is on the screen right now. Click it, watch them, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Can Florida State get out of the ACC and move on to the Big Ten or the SEC? Another hurdle has been hurdled or jumped or whatever. I don't have a really good analogy for that, but another hurdle has been cleared. Wish Trey Cunningham was here to help me with that. For Florida State to maybe make it to the Big Ten. We'll talk to you guys soon. Go Noles.